afternoon, Rep Squad. Welcome to another edition of Disability News You Can Use, where I bring stories about us and for us, and also practical tips that'll help you get through this. Let's get into it. Who is tired of hearing about this COVID-19? Are you guys staying clean and safe and vigilant and protected out there? Of course, there is uncharted territory for a whole bunch of us, not just the government. The school districts is in a frenzy, if you will. And I would say they're probably more in a frenzy when it comes to students receiving special ed services. So this is one of the reasons why I brought this video for you today, because guess what? What do they do with our children? What do they do with the kids who are receiving special ed services and that cannot use distant learning or online learning to receive a free, appropriate public education during this public health pandemic currently known as the coronavirus, COVID-19. So many of you parents who may be listening to this video have a kiddo receiving specialized instruction and is probably freaking out a little bit, because I know some of us parents, we use school as a break from our kids. I just have to keep it transparent. As they say in my community, we got to keep this all one stack, because that's just what it is. However, while the school districts urge the kids, the students, to stay at home, and they can still receive their academics, their learning via online, or online rather, they can do this distant learning. What do you do with the children or the students that's receiving special ed services, which is a specialized form of education? Oftentimes, it involves having physical assistance. I don't want to get too deep off into it, but parents, this right here is a wake-up call of why it's so important that each and every last one of our kids be taught technology. This is 2020, people. You can use voice search if you cannot read or write. So there are other ways that we can help our kiddos access the internet, the world in which they live, by using some of this technology. But that's a whole nother story, a whole nother soapbox. This right here is bringing you the latest information as it relates to special education services. Now, this is what the rumbling and the conversations are in Congress currently. They want to basically waive IDEA, Individuals with Disability Education Act, kids receiving special education services altogether, meaning that they won't receive any services, or better yet, this will be a better way to say it. This bill that's being proposed currently through Congress would give each of the states authority to, if they didn't want to do nothing with our kids receiving special education services, they don't have to do nothing. As we all know, that regression is real. That's the reason why they offer ESY services. It has to be discussed every IEP meeting. Is there a possibility that this student will regress if they're not being exposed to this on a regular basis, even throughout the summer months? Because the return back from summer vacation for the regular school season, that those kids will regress so much that it's almost kind of like starting over. So to avoid that, that's the reason why ESY services during the summer is offered to many of our kids receiving special education services. Well, what happens when or if Congress agrees that each and every state in the United States don't have to do nothing with our kids? Huh? We are going, we're going to be paddling backwards. Do you hear me? A bunch of our kids is going to be left out in the cold. So, let's get into this email that I received from COPA, which I'm a member of. It's a national membership of attorneys and parent advocates. And so this particular organization is out there grinding and fighting for kids receiving special education services. Alrighty, so this is from COPA. The email reads, as the Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates, Inc., COPA reported yesterday negotiations are underway in Congress to provide an additional stimulus package in response to the COVID-19 outbreak. We are actively working on behalf of children with disabilities with members of Congress and appreciate those who contacted federal policymakers and asked that they not waive requirements under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act IDEA at this time. Your actions work. There is not an absolute waiver authority over IDEA in the bill, and I'll say yet. However, we cannot stop now. There are still cause for grave concern. Today, we are providing an update and can share the bill introduced last night in the Senate, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which provides an infusion of cash to key industries, support for healthcare providers, healthcare systems, and more. Unfortunately, also included in the bill is a provision that directs the Secretary DeVos, not exactly sure if I'm pronouncing it right, Secretary DeVos to report back to Congress within 30 days on the waivers needed under the IDEA and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504. And then it goes to references pages 220 through 231 of this proposed bill by Secretary DeVos. Okay, so if I can draw your attention to the top page, look at bullet 18 where it says IDEA report. I read through those ranges of pages as it relates to special ed students and how this language is written. It's a bunch of gobbledygook. The layperson is not going to understand this. Then if you look at page 231, bullet number 5, it uses a broad term, provide limited flexibility. Well, exactly what does that mean? The bill also gives the Secretary broad waiver authority over the Higher Education Act, HEA, Elementary and Education Act, ESEA, and Carl D. Perkins education laws. While the COVID-19 outbreak has placed a tremendous and unprecedented strain on schools and districts, we need to let Congress know that now is the time to embrace the ideas require partnership between schools and families to innovate, individualize, and if needed, advocate for more resources or relaxation and funding rules to allow services to continue and to meet student needs. It is not the time to abandon children with disabilities. I just added that word. It is not the time to abandon children with disabilities through waivers, which allow schools and districts to abdicate their responsibility. Just basically shuck it, okay? Because that's what this proposed bill, is giving these school districts to just basically say, you know what? It's waived. We're not going to try nothing on it. And we already know they already don't want to do what the heck they're supposed to do now. or without the COVID-19 outbreak. So to have this here, oh, they really don't want to try to figure out how to modify your child's curriculum and implement certain support so your kid can be successful. Oh, no, no, no. So I'm glad they used that word abdicate. They just totally want to shuck it. We must help schools and families work together to find solutions that allow children to receive equitable access to an education and the services that support them without weakening or undoing all of their civil and educational rights. Because that's what this proposed bill is doing. Oh, it's too hard on the school districts. I'm really getting ready to post this dude, the Secretary Devo picture in 1 second. Just let me finish this article. I can't even freaking get through it without just having something to say. Because this right here, to me, he's an idiot. Any proposed bill that's going to leave out a group of people, that's a problem. Okay, so maybe folks with disabilities, let me just be quiet. Let me continue on with this article because I'm digressing. Many of our members have reported examples of schools and districts that are embracing their responsibility and meeting the needs of students while physical buildings are closed. If you are watching this video and you have a kid that's receiving special ed services and help, go ahead and write that down off in the comments, because I am curious to see what kind of plan Bs or contingency plans, if you will, that other school districts are implementing to ensure that our kids are certainly not being left behind. Okay? If one school district gets shut down, if one kid is not getting it, it affects us all. And I can tell you right now, my child graduated, about a year or so ago. So I'm grateful to God that we're not in that particular situation. But of course, there are still other concerns because my son does receive quite a few specialized therapies. Either way, I'm just going to, make sure that I'm staying on topic here for this particular video. And that is to bring attention to this proposed bill by Secretary DeVos. Again, I'm getting ready to pop up this person's picture here in 1 second. Okay. So, what they're saying is that the action is that we must not allow, we as parents, other stakeholders in the community, we must not allow Congress to use the national crisis of this COVID-19 as a reason to justify opening up civil rights laws to harmful amendments in future bills. Therefore, COPA opposes the requirement for Secretary DeVos to develop a report of needed waivers under IDEA and Section 504. Such a report will provide the basis for the Secretary to recommend any number of waivers that in the future bills could upend key civil rights protections. Oh, it's a dirty game, people. They trying to take us back to the 1960s. Oh, no, we're not going back to the institutions. Those days are over. You look for part 2 of what you need to know about COVID-19 relief plan and special education.